I will start my intervention in reply to the budget speech of the Minister of Finance and Economic Development this morning by stating a fundamental truth. And it epitomizes one of the worst misdeeds of this government. This fundamental truth does not emanate from me. I have borrowed it from someone whom everybody have heard of, the Iron Lady, whom I don't necessarily admire, but who spoke the truth. And the same truth was conveyed loud and clear by the Minister of Finance of Singapore and the former Prime Minister of that great island, Singapore. Of course, they said the same things differently. And the fundamental truth goes as follows. One of our great debates over times is about how much of your money should be spent by the state and how much you should keep to spend on your family. Let us never forget this fundamental truth. The state has no source of money other than the money people earn themselves. And if the state wishes to spend more, it can do so only by borrowing your savings or by taxing you more, and it's no good thinking that someone else will pay. And that someone else is you. There's no such thing as public money. There is only taxpayers' money. Mr. Speaker, in other words, this is our money. Therefore, whatever they say they are doing right, whatever great and magnificent things they say they are doing, it is all our money. And the worst misdeed of this government is to hide from the whole population that essentially all the measures that they have announced come from our money as derived from four sources: the debt, the tax which everybody paid directly and indirectly, the depreciation of the rupee which is shrinking, and the only, I won't say commodity, but the only thing which I know is shrinking faster than the rupee, of course, is the MSM. And inflation, which is a tax on the poor, and inflation is constantly going up. Now, it is from money which we have earned or money which we will have to pay because of the borrowings. And magical thinking gives a raw deal. In fact, the regime is leaving our country in a financial mess like there is no tomorrow. It is debt-ridden and a high borrowing regime. Their tomorrow is not ours. Ours is the nation's expectation of today and the hope of tomorrow. We shall deliver more and better, but we shall deliver responsibly. We say yes to social measures, but of course, they have to be sustainable. But where is the economic thinking and strategy? Beware of spiral inflation, a vicious circle. The economy is stupid, and rebuild your fiscal or external reserves, a note of caution which was sounded by the IMF. And I will say loud and clear that the next government from this side of the House will put hard-earned cash in the hands of our people, purchasing power and not illusion money. Purchasing power is the outcome of investment in productive sectors of the economy. It rests upon confidence, transparency, accountability. We are the shapers and movers of policies for the people, by the people, and with the people. Our tomorrow is the immediate lowering of the price of petroleum products as it will have a cascading impact upon the productive sectors of the economy and the consumers. It will re-energize the economy which is tax-laden. Out of the 10.2 billion collected from each and every citizen of this country, the regime has used only 48%, that is 4.9 billion, to finance the subsidy on pain maison, the rice, and the 12 kilogram cylinder of cooking gas. It is the trademark of this regime, i.e. opacity. And I will continue with an anomaly, where the dialogue with social partners on salary adjustment. The minister is talking to the private sector, and I expect the minister to widen the circle of and to include all social partners. There is a big anomaly. There is no announcement on the relativity salary adjustment report. It was promised since a long time to cure anomalies created by the rise in the minimum wage to 16,500 rupees and the introduction of a minimum guaranteed income to 18,500. The predicament has been by the rise of minimum guaranteed income to 20,000 rupees. Unattended, unresolved, it will create a significant anomaly. It goes all the way through salary ladder and applies to both public and private sector employees. There are 427,000 workers who are seeking and expecting redress. They are right. If minimum guaranteed income is brought to 20,000, representing an increase of 7,925 from 12,075 in 2022, surely someone who earns 20,000 or more legitimately expects a salary adjustment. Who would want to be a police officer on the basic salary of 18,250 and be bonded for 5 years? Last year, it was announced 1,000 would be recruited, and only 675 young police officers were enlisted, and 25 had already left. Temptation is there over meager salaries. Young graduates hardly earn more than 27,000 rupees, and there's no mention in the budget to review the salaries. As for those who are self-employed, they are the forgotten thousands. No financial support at all when they're out of work. It's a time bomb ticking. Diffuse it, make no mistake. The bulk of our workforce is on a warpath. They have seen what you did, what the government did to the employees of Air Mauritius, who were forced to go on an early retirement, foregoing part of their pension. The CB employees know their pension fund is depleted, and don't tell workers, take it or go to the redundancy board. Bear the consequences. The sooner the Prime Minister calls a snap election, the better. Cheap labor from overseas should not be to the detriment of a workforce. No citizen, male or female, who is employable should be left behind. Mauritius should not be an overcrowded barracoon of foreign workers. Yes to matching of skills where there is a shortage may bring brain drain into brain gain. Foreign workers have rights, and the employer cannot have it field day. The law may be an ask, but the labor law cannot be an ask vis-à-vis foreign workforce. We are signatory to ILO Convention on Migrant Workers. Let me remind our friends on government bench, the Labour Party, the architect of the modern-day welfare state. The regime is using surreptitious means to dismantle the welfare state to serve the interests of their friends and cronies in the insidious privatization of healthcare and education. Slowly and surely, killing welfare state softly and gently. The taxpayers have a right to welfare state, and state has an obligation to deliver. The public-private institutions have to have a symbiotic relationship. They have to level up towards quality and delivery of services. Notwithstanding free education, free transport, free health services, Labour gave free dialysis to patients. It was denied by the MSM government. MSM wanted to do away with universal pension. It favored targeted approach. There was a huge outcry, and the government recoiled from its decision after the PNQ asked by the then leader of opposition, Dr. Ramgoolam, set the record right. Who was Prime Minister then? Pravin Jagannath was Prime Minister. The MSM has done away with contributory pension.
Order. I will entertain only points of order.
Yeah, Finance Minister. Yeah, I'm sorry, Finance Minister he was. But he was responsible, he was fired. I tried to elevate his status, he doesn't deserve it. You said it, you don't want him to be elevated. But the Minister of Finance was responsible. Mr. Speaker, the MSM has done away with contributory pension, the NPF, to be replaced by tax contribution sociale généralisée, the pay-as-you-go. The MSM has to bear huge responsibility. Contribution sociale généralisée is a tax pay-as-you-go, which brings in 13 billion annually. It has to be pro-poor and pro-poor indeed. It is not the first time a regime has faced a crisis. I've been in this temple of democracy since 1987. I have listened to budgets delivered by many ministers of finance. They justify the giveaway or takeaway in full compliance of macroeconomic factors, that is sound monetary and fiscal consolidation with fiscal buffers. We faced food, feed and fuel crisis in 2008. COVID crisis may be more unprecedented than others, but a crisis is not an opportunity to raid the bank, to be fraudsters, banksters, and certified crooks. The Minister of Finance will make the political exit, his political exit, as a fiddler. Even the integrity of CSO, the Central Statistics Office, stands doubtful. Yet IMF and World Bank rely on figures of Central Statistics Office. There should be no fiddling of debt, growth, inflation, and there is no fiddling of debt, growth, and inflation with camouflage the mess. The overinflated GDP is a case of magical accounting for the regime. The regime has fiddled to increase growth as a percentage of GDP and to lower budget deficit. The global business has not been ripped from the GDP. The Republic of Ireland, with its offshore or global business, was denounced by IMF and other agencies. Is it not? I'm sure the Minister would agree. And I would like to refer to an article, or rather a program, which was made by Resistance and Alternative. And they dedicated an entire program on manipulation of GDP. And it has been vehemently denounced also, this manipulation of GDP by all our friends from extra-parliamentary parties. Mr. Speaker, it was the former Minister of Financial Services, Mr. Kushram, who was the first to flag it. For my part, I deplore the misleading emphasis of the Honourable Minister on GDP growth when he claims that paragraph 12 of the budget speech, and I quote, "We registered a strong GDP growth rate of 7% in 2023, followed an exceptional growth of 8.9% in 2022. In fact, our GDP per capita was USD 11,409 in 2019 to USD 11,417 in 2023, according to the latest IMF report. This is less than 1% GDP growth per capita over 4 years. It is more of a mirage and far from a miracle. The regime, of course, will make the most of a news budget from last financial year. I grant you, there is some tax buoyancy from inflation and depreciation of rupee and proceeds from tourism, construction, and financial services. Depreciation of the rupee and inflation is at the expense of the poor, the lesser poor, and the middle class. The corporate sector is lapping it up from the huge bonanza of MIC, and paragraph 135 of the budget is another sweetener for those alleged who are too big to fail. And then what? Spiral inflation is a vicious circle. Raiding the central bank printing helicopter money will not solve the problem. The 150 billion rupees taken from Bank of Mauritius is a debt burden for taxpayers. If the alleged recovery of the economy is from productive sectors, why did the regime, on 2 successive years, 2022 and 2023, raid the reserves of the bank by $1 billion US? $2 billion US withdrawn from the central bank. There is a shortage of foreign currencies. Importers of commodities and parents whose kids are studying overseas are desperate. The purchasing power of citizens has gone down by 34% from 2019 to March 2024. The poor have become poorer, and the middle class have to walk between the anvil and the hammer. They deserve better. For God's sake, we want purchasing power, no to illusion money and poverty. For how long can the working class survive on the crumbs that fall off the master's table? The Minister of Social Integration of Social Security knows only too well social integration is a far cry from reality. The mess is due to mismanagement of the economy. The Minister of Finance knows that perception is not a mirror image of reality. He's selling an overinflated product. A survey conducted by the reputed firm Analysis Qatar on Consumer Confidence Index showed that 64% of persons have voted to say a climate of pessimism is prevailing. It's a massive vote of no confidence in a regime on the decline, Mr. Speaker. Saint-Clair's Express reveals that 70% of the population is dissatisfied and a sizable number of housewives and dread going to super and hypermarket. 65% of our imports is in dollar, and the rupee has nosedived by more than 29% vis-à-vis the dollar. The cost of living is prohibitively high. It is a winter of growing discontent. No one should be subservient to IMF and World Bank, but the findings of the reports cannot leave us indifferent or insensitive. Let us put aside IMF, World Bank, Moody's Credit Ratings Agency for a moment. Ask a simple question. As responsible parents, should we mortgage and jeopardize the future of our children and grandchildren and bequeath a legacy of heavy debt to our dear ones? Where is our sovereign wealth fund? Our external reserves, medium and long-term sustainability of debt is impossible unless there is real growth, not growth based on inflation, unless we eliminate waste, unless we wage war on fraud and corruption, and the parallel economy laced with drugs. The regime does not inspire confidence. Mr. Speaker, the Labour-MMD alliance will usher in a climate of confidence. Everybody will be on board. It will be a Republic of Mauritius incorporated. Equity, equality, and justice for all. Unity in diversity and diversity in unity. We forge nationhood. They tear apart the fabric of our communities, of our society. No budget can defy gravity. When the interest rate and deposit is less than US rate of 5.5%. Our rupee will continue to slide vis-à-vis the dollar and basket of currencies. The rupee will keep depreciating and the cost of living crisis will worsen. Prices of food, feed, fuel, pharmaceutical products would continue to rise under the regime. Mr. Speaker, hear the story of a desperate middle-class parent. And I quote, since 3 weeks, I am on the wait list, the 12th person at one of the banks due to foreign forex shortage. I call under the bank manager, same story, shortage of forex. I'm having to wait over 2 weeks to transfer money abroad. Many Mauritians abroad are scared to invest their hard-earned US dollar, if the pound sterling or euro in Mauritius. When it is time to take my money back in hard currency, we have to queue up for weeks at the bank. This is the story, this is the plight of those who have to send money overseas for the children who are studying, and this is the plight of those who have import to make sure that business is going on. Mr. Speaker, the electoral budget is being introduced against mounting debt, a yawning trade deficit, and collapsing public services. The message is clear. Come with a clear statement, and don't be a fiddler on the roof. The special funds like COVID Project Development Fund, the National Resilience Fund cannot remain extra-budgetary. The Bank of Mauritius Act should be amended to phase out MIC, no more a shareholder of MIC. It has a boon for the corporate sector, and amongst others, Maradiva Hotel has obtained convertible bond of over 1.9 billion. A debt is a debt. There should be no write-off. I convey the message loud and clear. It's taxpayers' money, no rip-off. I've been told that money of MIC has been transferred overseas. It is the sweat and tears of workers from all sectors. Those guilty of impropriety or financial crimes won't get away. Our biggest threat remains public debt and total public debt. Unfortunately, public debt of more than 525 billion rupees is piling up. And with the 60 billion out of the 150 billion of helicopter money, it amounts to 585 billion. That is more than 1 million of debt owed by every member of the workforce. Our national cake, the real gross domestic product, is not what it is, I've stated earlier. Grossly exaggerated by more than 90 billions by the fiddlers. Global business want to know if they will be exempted from the corporate climate fund levy of 2%. Expectation to generate 5 billion from the climate levy are there, but we have to be told how this money will be used. Like the contribution sociale généralisée, to plug into the recurrent deficit and make no non-productive permits, that is unacceptable. The latest audit report has clearly highlighted the wastage created by the present government in terms of complete mismanagement of funds. Can we trust them with another 5 billion? I propose the setting up of a private-public partnership with clear term of reference. Transparency and accountability should be on the agenda, and we have to make sure that this fund is managed in all transparency and accountability. And we have to make sure that it is not managed in relation to the manner with which the CSR fund was managed. The fiddlers have to explain. Mr. Speaker, mismanagement, misprocurement, and politically motivated decision have cost the citizens close to more than 100 billion, or an average of 25 million daily since 2015. And I don't have to elaborate. From BI to Betamax, fall in valuation of the SBM, it's a long way to Tipperary, as my Irish friends would say. Just another instance of gross mismanagement by the government can be found on page 20 and paragraph 135 of the budget speech. The Minister of Finance has announced that government will provide support to some of the richest individuals of the country by compensating the increase in the minimum wage and salary compensation of 2024 in the textile industry. Such a support should have been restricted to the more modest textile companies. Let me remind the House that under the Labour government, the wages from 2010 to 2014 increased by 34%, and loss of power purchase was only 12.8%. According to Statistics Mauritius, between 2019 to 2023, wages increased by 20% and cumulated loss of purchasing power was 28%. Mr. Speaker, under the Prime Ministership of Dr. Ramgoolam, quality of life was comparable to a highest income status country. We were looking at new poles of development and consolidation of existing sectors. We had a vision and a well-established roadmap to level up. This is the reality. When we come back to power after the next general election, we will create growth. Yes, growth from productive sectors, growth from new pillars would be more than 7%, unlike the MSM, which manipulates and creates artificial growth. Since 2015, it has been a decent into chaos. Where the capacity to pay? It is not because government is hard up that overtime of civil servants would not be paid. Payment of overtime is long overdue. Police and other officers in essential services are waiting to have their overtime payments. The Minister of Health is hard up for cash payments. Government owes more than $1 billion to suppliers of food, drugs, and medicine. I owe you the mantra of the Minister of Health, and they are those from the private sector and who feel aggrieved or suing government for failing to honor its debt obligation. Mr. Speaker, I met an elderly couple the other day, and they told me that their pharmacy bill is 12,000 rupees monthly. Why? To a large extent because hospitals cannot afford to dispense the prescribed drugs. Let me now turn to the tourism sector. Revenue from the tourism, financial services, and construction industry, as I've stated earlier, remain the feeder of a fragile economy. And I will later comment on the vulnerability of the financial services and speculation on properties. Unlike other tourist destinations, our tourism sector was late to take off after COVID. Government predicts 1.4 million tourists to generate 100 billion rupees of a depreciated rupee. A tourist on average stays 11 days and will spend approximately 7,000 per night, including hotel stay, food and drinks, transport, excursion, shopping, spa, etc. Absolutely no concrete measures to boost tourist spending and offer choices and services for tourists to spend their money. The current increase in tourist spending is mainly due to a depreciating rupee. Employment in tourism declined from 31,000 in 2019 to 28,000 in 2024, and yet locals are fleeing the job in hotels in favor, of course, of cruisers. From a regional leader in tourism in the 90s and early 2000, Mauritius is now ranked 4th in the region in terms of average spending, trailing behind Maldives, Seychelles, and even Sri Lanka. I would advise the Deputy Prime Minister to revisit his policy. Mr. Speaker, the voters will make no U-turn with any takeaway or giveaway. This budget has more holes than Swiss cheese. The nation is alive to the cost of living crisis. Money illusion gives a feel-good sensation which is short-lived. Fundamentals are not being addressed. The budget does not mention an equity investment by government of $6 billion in financial year 24-25 in the Mauritius Housing Holdings Limited without an explanation of the company and the use of funds. The minister has to explain. The elevated debt burden compared to peer countries is a critical issue. Lessons have not been learned or drawn. A downgrade to junk status would be damaging for bank and financial institutions. Mr. Speaker, the rejection of the MSME is inevitable. It is sailing in a sea of unelectability. The regime thrives on corruption and fraud, money politics, fake news, and deep fake news. MSM-led regime has failed on economy, education, law and order, and national unity. It has no new poles of development. It is an outright failure and, of course, thrives on outdated policies. Mr. Speaker, the wind of change is blowing. To understand real change, it's good to walk down memory lanes. We were a monocrop economy. Sugar was the mainstay and was the sweat and tears of an exploited workforce. Before independence, we were an overcrowded barracoon, described as a nation of nurses by V.S. Naipaul. After independence, under the able leadership of the father of the nation, Mauritius opted for predictability and reliability and not for the vagaries of world market prices. Proceeds from the sale of sugar to US and UK markets are used to diversify the economy and widen the circle of opportunities to forge a neighborhood,
Honorable Body in order.
To forge nationhood. With market preferences, we became a reliable export-oriented and services economy. Free education, free transport was sound investment to prepare our people to face daunting challenges and grasp opportunities. Free education became a passport for life. Financial sector, IT-enabled services, circular economy are new poles of development. If properly harnessed, the rate of growth can be phenomenal. Potential to be an ocean state with our vast EZ and extended continental shelf is within reach. That is the blue economy of which the budget is alarmingly silent. Mr. Speaker, to sustain development, we have to be a much sought after destination and turn brain drain into brain gain and say no to mismatch of skills. We have to go for strategic partnership in productive sectors of the economy. Unfortunately, we are in a crisis. We have the cost of the living crisis, the baby crisis, and the labor shortage. We have rising sovereign debt. We need a sovereign wealth fund managed by experts for long-term sustainability. Norway did it in all transparency and accountability. But the emergence of a parallel economy laced with hardcore drugs is a threat to our society. Gang violence is showing its ugly head. At one time, the talk of the town was whether India would write off the concessionary loan extended to Mauritius. Mr. Speaker, let us wait for the return of the Prime Minister. The MSM saw a dream that will not be fulfilled. That is, huge sum to be reaped annually from lease our territory to go to UK. Of course, discussion ongoing, and we will have to wait for outcome of the UK general elections. We will be the government which will conduct and conclude the negotiation. Mr. Speaker, how can we expect an increase in productivity when the Container Park Performance Index places Mauritius at an underwhelming 327th out of 348 ports globally? The MSM never bothered to turn our port into a hub. According to UNCTAD, small islands or developing countries pay twice for the costs of imports and export. We are being priced out. Depreciation of the rupee cannot be a way of life. Let us modernize our port and be environmentally sensitive to sustainable development in its vicinity. Out of 968 drains projects entrusted to NDU, only 34 were in progress. It's taxpayers' money thrown down the drain with a number of abandoned projects. Do you know the amount of interest payment paid to a contractor in relation to Rivière-du-Rempart Power Market Fair? 522 million rupees. Shocking, it stinks. The inhabitants have to suffer undue hardship inflicted by a regime for failing to repair potholes, to patch roads, and construction of retaining walls. Perhaps these projects appear insignificant to the regime because they are not cash cow, money talk. Are you surprised, Mr. Speaker, when MPs of the regime are copiously insulted? Mr. Speaker, as we say, water, water everywhere, but where the running water? CWA has a director converted into a quasi-minister. Non-revenue water exceeds 50% owing to an antiquated piping system. The former DPM promised water supply on a 24/7 basis. Indeed, game for a laugh, but a tragic reality for those who have no running water to shower and to flush the toilets. Enough is enough. It is flagrant violation of basic human rights for people not to have water, to have a shower a day, or to flush the toilets. Of course, they've decided to flush the regime on the day of reckoning. The internal auditor of the CWA has drawn attention that payments would not be sanctioned in relation to the pipe-laying system project. The quality of work has to be certified by engineers. The lady did not budge. She has chosen to quit. And I have to congratulate internal auditors from different sectors, namely CWA, from Silverbank and other institutions who preferred to resign rather than being submissive and party to corrupt practices. The internal auditor deserves our praise. I still don't understand why officers of the Ministry of Finance bent backwards to sanction payment irrespective of quality of work. Undue pressure was used by the director of the CWA. I am appalled and shocked the substantive ministers treated with contempt by the quasi-minister of water. Mr. Speaker, the budget has been overshadowed by the parallel economy. The hardcore drugs are killing fields our society. 14 billion worth of drug seizures since 2016 to date is the tip of the iceberg. If not addressed frontally, it will lead to a descent into social chaos. The nexus with drug barons is obvious. A Bolivian couple with 6 kilograms of cocaine worth 100 million rupees is the mule for a drug baron living in Mauritius. Who is he? Perhaps the cronies of the MSM, led by Praveen Jagannath, should know. 95 kilograms of cocaine was discovered in the mechanical excavator on the day the first tram of mail landed. No arrest yet, but inquiry is still ongoing. In 2022, out of 120 cases reported, only 3 cases landed in court. The big boss roams freely because of the nexus. Honorable Minister of Commerce, Karichand, was wrong to authorize the roll-on cigarette paper with a street value. Yes? Okay.
What is happening here? Is there any point of order?
Point of order. At no point in time, I authorized. I answered the PNQ where I stated that the authorization was given back in 2019.
As a responsible minister, you should have seen to it that this should have been shelved and measures taken to make sure that there is no roll-on cigarette paper. I've read your reply. I've read your reply. You have to bear your responsibility. I can understand you're trying to be a responsible minister, but unfortunately you didn't act and you didn't take corrective measure. You should have said so. You should have done so. Mr. Speaker, Labour-led government will be ruthless and merciless towards drug barons. The truth will be uncovered as to those who have been close to traffickers. The Lam Shanling report gave a foretaste. The MSM-led regime will have it in the face. That's the difference. There's a vast difference between them and us. Zero tolerance toward those who are harming and destroying our children, our youth, our human capital. The Dangerous Drugs Act has to be amended. All drugs-related cases must be referred to the office of the DPP. There is a racket led by a person to get some of the alleged offenders off the hook against huge payments. Monitor high-profile cases of drug traffickers are not always being referred to the office of the DPP. Striking team is reluctant at times to dismantle the network. Mr. Speaker, COVID was an early harvest and a bumper crop for many, notwithstanding the hefty contribution made to swell the war chest of the MSM. The 10 million rupees that Mr. GMLS made is only a tip of the iceberg. After all, he stated forcefully he was the special advisor to the Prime Minister. Are you surprised that the MSM has 4 to 5 billion to exercise, billion rupees to exercise undue influence at the forthcoming general election? Who said it? An independent political analyst. Did he say 40,000 rupees per voter? It's taxpayers' money. Taxpayers have been ripped off. Time to collect, Mr. Speaker. Voters will strike with the sweat and tears of joy to oust the regime. Mr. Speaker, I talk our human capital, our best asset. It is the powerhouse. It is the energizer the movers and shapers of our economy. Can you imagine our financial services, our IT-enabled services, the tourism, without the vigor of our youth? We have been able to leave the grey list of OECD and blacklist of EU, advise the regime not to entertain the likes of Gupta and Shetty. This government has failed to draw lessons from the evil effect which Dr. Sobrino had upon our financial services. The Indian press writes, the past investment may be scrutinized. Government ends easy tax relief for Mauritius-based foreign portfolio investment. It has to adapt to consolidate and make the financial services more competitive. Promises were made by the Indian Prime Minister Modi to late Sanaru Jagannath that India would protect our low tax jurisdiction. But whether we like it or not, multilateral agreement rule the waves and there's no departure. Before signing the recent amendments on the Mauritius-India Protocol, influenced by the base erosion profit shifting, Mauritius should have first looked for a carve-out on the grandfathering of businesses before 2017, as prevailed in the double taxation avoidance treaty. Will grandfathering provisions likely to be insulated from amended rules? There has been no dialogue with operators. It is unfortunately a false start. Many big players have acquired companies in our financial center. We have to be mindful that they don't use our domestic companies simply as back office. Value addition will keep our youth in our jurisdiction. A labor-led government will turn brain drain into brain gain. Youngsters in the financial services are taking up employment in more secure jurisdictions. Did I not say at the beginning, we are under the constant gaze of the IMF and the FATF. Yet, we have to make sure that our jurisdictions are clean and neat. But we're not making much headway in a sector where opportunities are constantly knocking. We must not be a tax haven for shady characters. As a low-tax jurisdiction, tax avoidance today and evasion should be past history. What they want in our jurisdiction is substance, substance, and substance. Mr. Speaker, EDB conduct roadshows and fairs in the interest of unfortunately land speculators. It should not incentivize the whole of our limited land area. Why are our young, qualified, or skilled manpower seeking better pastures? The regime is to be blamed. It is impossible for many of our young people to buy a plot of land and construct a decent home. The cost of 7 pairs of land for construction can be as high as 2 million rupees, Mr. Speaker. Land speculation is killing the legitimate hope of a young couple who want to have a roof over their head, to ensure that the kitchen runs smoothly, and to make laughter the best medicine. The fear is real from the number of foreigners who are allowed to buy ground plus 2 properties. Put citizens, our republic first, they are being priced out. Mr. Speaker, our best asset is our valuable human capital. The Mauritian miracle is possible. A nation's strength, warns Emmanuel Macron, France's president, lies in its ability to generate a dynamic birth rate. An article in The Economist highlights the chronic and acute demographic problem. The world wants to escape baby crisis. Since 2006, in September 2006, South Korea's government has spent $270 billion or just 1% of its GDP a year on baby-making incentives, such as tax break for parents and maternity care. Year in, year out, IMF reminds us that the impact of our demographic problem will impact upon our PRB and social aid. Our actuarial team recommended a host of reform. Parental leave will have its lawful place on our agenda. The measure announced in the budget conveys the right signal. Of course, of human bondage should be our mantra. A selective immigration policy deserves utmost consideration. The delicate balance of our demographic pattern has to be maintained. We are a world in miniature, and we have to consolidate unity and solidarity, and it should be sine qua non, which is sine qua non for stability and growth. Mr. Speaker, this is the Parliament of dissolution. I can give firm guarantee to the population that the Labour-led alliance will deliver. The key word is governance. We will put hard-earned cash in the pockets of workers and will deliver love and care to the needy and persons with disabilities. We have to dignify our people. Equity, equality, and magnanimity will be our mantra. The MSM-led regime is leaving the country with a parallel economy based on drugs trafficking. It has to be dismantled. An educational system which has become a threat to children and society. 94% of failure rate for those in the extended program. Education has to be a success story, a passport for life, and not a jailhouse rock for misfits. Bring all our kids on the path to success, irrespective if some will move on the fast track and others on the slow lane. It is the ultimate destination which matters. The key word is level up. Madam Vice Prime Minister, Parents and Teachers Association of Private Secondary School are up in arms. They are sick and tired of being taken for a ride. The books of teaching materials have been delivered after a long wait, a wait of more than 5 months. The problem of shortage of teachers, of teaching staff, is yet to be resolved. Be flexible, for God's sake. Do recruit. They blame government for high rate of truancy. It is higher than the pre-COVID period. The problem of drugs in school is not negligible. It is becoming acute. The director of the PSA is insensitive vis-à-vis partners because he thinks he was offered a sinecure. The goalposts cannot be changed to frustrate management and teaching staff of the private secondary school. The question that begs an answer is the agenda of the regime to bring the demise of private secondary education paid by taxpayers. Granting aid should not be delayed to frustrate management of private secondary. No child should be left behind. I appeal to the Vice Prime Minister to take corrective measures, even if a regime is on the verge of collapse. Make an exit with clear conscience. And I will quote what a co-leader of the Youth and Social Support Project stated, Professor Coup. He said that the benefits of good social support cascade into many areas of health. Friendship and social connection are cornerstone of healthy adolescent development. If young people are lonely, they are then at an increased risk of developing depression, physical problems, such as poor sleep and later ill health, including cardiovascular disease. Mr. Speaker, we have to bring in civic education. We have to set up civil defense unit and draw lessons from the German system. Prepare young citizens to be citizens of good society. They have to be inculcated with values of democracy, relevance and importance of ecology, and sustainable development and good citizenship. They are our best asset, though at times they behave like angels with tight fists. We have to make our youth the eco-warriors of today. Amending the Constitution to make our seats an ocean state is the way forward. There's so much which could have been done for a country with 2.1 million square kilometers of EZ, the 20th largest in the world. It is high on our agenda. Blue economy holds promises for prosperous Republic of Mauritius with its vast EZ and extended continental shelf. Not a single mention, as I've stated earlier, of blue economy in the budget. EIA licenses are dished out at an alarming rate over a year. The Minister of Environment is like a desperate swimmer, and he cannot be insensitive or indifferent to the pertinent matter raised by Honorable Ms. Béranger. I will not elaborate, but a minister sworn in cannot be judge and party. I hope he declares his interest in cabinet. We in the opposition are monitoring. La Chambre de Notaire cannot act like the three wise monkeys. It would be unwise. Mr. Speaker, let me turn to agriculture. Who cares about encroachment on prime agricultural land? Who cares if our food bill is more than 60 billion rupees? Where is our policy to produce what we eat and eat what we produce? This is no longer a priority for Minister of Agro-Industry and Landscape. Where the policy for rehabilitation of abandoned agricultural land? Smart agriculture is a foreign dream. Sugarcane remains a good carbon dioxide cleanser. The Minister of Finance announced that planters would obtain 30,000 rupees per ton of sugar. But the Minister has to tell us what is the ex-syndicate price, whether additional money is going to be obtained from special sugars. The price obtained has to be aligned. The number of planters is declining. There are 8,000 planters only and many absentee landowners. Measures announced to rehabilitate land, but let us pray and hope. As of now, only 2,000 hectares are under replantation, and not 9,000 hectares as have been stated in the budget. Mr. Speaker, as for key performance indicators, these are yet to be spelled out. So I will ask the Minister to check the figures. 30,000 hectares in the sugarcane cultivation. Abundant land can be used for reforestation to obtain carbon credit, notwithstanding sugarcane itself is a good carbon dioxide cleanser. For God's sake, set up the Vocational School of Agriculture. Start with basic research and development and innovation. Computer control agricultural production with AI is a reality. Unfortunately, with Landscape, there is neither scope, scale, nor depth for the planters and other entrepreneurs. Where is the polytonal agriculture, which we highlighted every time we have an opportunity to raise the issue? Bring in the Dutch and the South Koreans as strategic partners. Self-sufficiency is not a dream, it can be a reality. Livestock farming units have to be set up, but it may be a daunting task. Lessons have to be learned from the Salazi experience. The MCIA is mired, the Mauritius Cane Industry Authority, in controversy. It has no internal auditor and qualified company secretary. The report of the external auditor is shocking and a shame for management. It is a time bomb loaded with debt and is serving the personal interests of like-minded to the detriment of the planters community. Audit committee meetings have not been held for more than 3 years. The last one was on the 23rd October 2020. Up to the 21st April 2023, nothing has happened. Procurement procedures are flawed, and nothing is posted on the Public Procurement Office portal. I've been told tender for construction of warehouses to store bagged sugars have been launched. By a date of magic, the cost of construction of 3 warehouses has escalated from 200 million to 500 million rupees for construction of only 2 warehouses. I've been told that the chief executive is a designated candidate for MSM. Let me turn to the floodgates of financial scams. Since 2015, the regime has been a floodgate of financial scams. I will highlight the corrupt privileges extended through surreptitious amendment of the finance bill. Who are the beneficiaries? Banksters, fraudsters, colonies of the regime. Do the name of Sobrino, Shetty, Guptang, Lioti ring a bell? Banking license is granted easily with high risk. Money talk. Since 2017, the Bank of Mauritius has become less diligent on source of fund. I demand that the Prime Minister provide an exhaustive and transparent explanation of the circumstances surrounding the approval of Mr. Sobrino's application. The Prime Minister's office is alleged to have manipulated existing regulation to facilitate the approval of Sobrino's investment banking licenses. This included legislative changes that allowed the Financial Services Corporation to issue licenses for investment banks, bypassing the Bank of Mauritius, which had previously refused to grant Sobrino a banking license due to his controversial background. These legislative adjustments were seen as tailor-made specifically to accommodate Sobrino's application, further indicating undue influence. Prime Minister should take unqualified responsibility for any and all the consequences that may arise from this shocking lapse in judgment. The stories of Silver Bank will be told. Why is the minister unwilling to reply to legitimate PNQ? Secrecy and the provisions of Section 64 of the Banking Act and Section 26 of the Bank of Mauritius Act is used to hide the grant of licenses, to give unsecured loan or to loan them money. Is it with the protection of the governor of Bank of Mauritius, recently elevated to the status of Grand Commander Star and Key of the Republic of Mauritius? The Minister of Finance chose to insulate itself. Sorry, not the Minister. The Minister of Finance chose to insulate himself from the provisions of the Banking Act. Why? Who are the beneficiaries? When the empire is on the verge of collapsing, it will introduce the most corrosive pieces of legislation surreptitiously in the finance bill, Mr. Speaker. An investigative journalist, Mr. NJ, on the 23rd of May 24, made shocking revelation on how depositors of ex-Banyan Tree Bank were coerced to sign a deposit retention agreement to transfer the deposits to Silver Bank. Biggest financial scam, heist with no certainty that taxpayers' money will be returned. A regime of banksters and fraudsters aided and abetted by those at the helm. Do you know of any central bank which has allowed cronies to have loans without guarantees while auditing the account of a bank? How much unsecured loans have been extended to Mr. and Mrs. Gupta and others? 8.8 billion rupees yet to be accounted for. A journalist from UK, from the Times of UK, and the name I won't drop, is investigating the case. The alleged import of nickel sold to Trifigura by Gupta was all but nickel. A character shady and uses his wife as an accomplice. And I've been told that the gentleman, when he made a visit to Mauritius, he was given VVIP treatment. The unfettered powers conferred upon the Financial Crime Commission are being challenged in the Supreme Court by the Office of the DPP. The Financial Crime Commission, unfortunately, has become the political arm of the executive to strike at all political opponents. It cannot remain a gray area. A Labour member, Nouveau Democrat, will repeal the Financial Crime Commission to introduce a fiercely independent, serious fraud office. Mr. Speaker, let me now turn to the health sector. Not everybody can throw taxpayers' money, the millions of rupees from purchase of ineffective ventilators. One may say, who cares when it's taxpayers' money? Prime Minister chaired high-powered emergency committee. He stated the requests came from Minister of Health. I'm not saying that he had a selective memory, and he should tell the House, but the population has a right to know who gave firm instruction to doctors to approve the acquisition of substandard equipment. I know of a specialist who quit. She felt sick because of coercion. The consultant anesthetist told the Minister of Health he would not approve the purchase. Are we surprised that the biochemical engineer stood up to the Minister of Health and told him to seek elsewhere? There will be an inquiry. The successive reports from the Director of Audit since 2021 have given hate over many untold stories. Emergency procurement during COVID was a festival and a bonanza for cronies of the regime. Pack and blister rogue suppliers sold artificial respirators, not to the norms and standards, for 476 million rupees, and thermal camera from budgétaires for controversial sum of almost 309 million rupees. Mrs. Govindan, whose husband died prematurely, I'm sure has many untold stories to tell. And I'm sure Dr. Jumai would be obliged. Mr. Speaker, winners take all, but they left their main agent out. The diary with all the payments will be used as evidence to uncover the truth. You just have to wait. The main agent was left out after threatening to denounce the crooks. He was kidnapped and murdered in Telfair, Mocha, whose hands are smeared with the blood of the late Mr. Skisner. How do some of them dare to shake the hands of decent people? I'm not going to talk of benefit of doubt, but the hands are smeared. The truth will be uncovered, and guilty party or parties will have to face trial. It is a mediocre attempt to address the key health issues affecting our population in the short term and long term. We have to focus on secondary and tertiary prevention, and unfortunately, they have focused on secondary and tertiary prevention and practically ignored primary prevention. Medication costs will continue to rise, and additionally, there may be a lack of key medication if the situation is not addressed. The artificial intelligence ECG machine should never have made its way into the budget. It is at a premature and preclinical stage at best, and I would advise the Honourable Minister to pay heed to 2 scientific papers which were published, and we could forward copies to him. The reason as to why they put into question the reliability and interpretation of the results. I would advise him to err on the side of caution and be careful because of false positive results. And he has to tell us why these results have to be interpreted in Germany and at what cost. Unfortunately, there's no mention of mental health of the population. This has been completely sidelined in the budget. Mr. Speaker, let me come to procurement of drugs, which is a major scandal. On procurement of 1 million tablets of molnupiravir, the principal pharmacist, Mr. Naik, has been made a scapegoat. The scandal denounced by MP Juman revealed that emergency procedures were not followed. An extraneous contract was awarded to a rogue importer at the scandalous price of almost 80 rupee per tablet, compared to the price of 930 rupee tablet from a reliable and trustworthy supplier. I'm not going to ask questions whose palms were greased, but this was insider trading, and guilty parties have to answer for. Whoever gave instructions, be it the CMO or any other person, will have to answer. The rule of ICAC was controversial and made uncalled comments on the ruling of the court. All charges against Mr. Naik have been dropped. Why is it that he is still under suspension? Mr. Speaker, as for High Perform, it registers medicine every month, whereas pharmaceutical products from reputed labs have to wait up to 1 year to register a new medicine of quality. I agree with the recommendation of the Competition Commission, which says yes to parallel import. All measures should be taken to prevent counterfeit products entering our market. The question that begs an answer: where is our quality assurance lab? If there is bioactive medicine in use in hospitals, 60% of the drugs should have been recalled. The views of the World Health Organization are pertinent, and Intellectual Property Rights Act has to be amended. Mr. Speaker, health is wealth, and there are lessons to be drawn from flash floods. Unfortunately, we never learned. Since 2015, the regime promised sewerage outflow would be a thing of the past. 10 years gone, there's still backflow and overflow from flash floods. Where the sewerage reticular network to redress this problem? The grievances of people have reached boiling point. Are we surprised of high incidence of death over infectious diseases like leptospirosis? And we have to beware of dengue and malaria. Mortality increases with age over 70 years of age. Other groups at increased risk of severe illness include pregnant women and also patients with chronic diseases such as renal disease, cancer, chronic lung disease, liver disease, and diabetes, as well as immunosuppressed patients. PNQ was asked on at-risk patients who are having renal dialysis. Neither the report of the fact-finding nor findings of the Medical Negligence Standing Committee has been rendered public. But the Minister of Health stated that the error was administrative, a major flaw indeed which cost the lives of 11 patients. Compensations to the bereaved families are long overdue, Minister. Renal replacement therapy is an important treatment for patients with renal failure due to leptospirosis. In severe cases of leptospirosis, renal replacement is required in just over 30% of patients. Have we projected an increased need for dialysis if we have an epidemic? Planning for these eventualities in advance will be best, of course. Mr. Speaker, let me turn to the People's Turf Public Limited Company. We are told that it will surrender its horse racing organizer license. But the gentleman is 2 furlongs ahead of the pack. His appearances in the media lately are a mere eyewash, and it has been so decided with the duplicity of the regime. We ask the question who controls the gambling mafia with complicity at the highest echelon of government. Mr. GMLS has an obligation to answer. The minister is desperate and wants to collect betting taxes which have nosedived. Horse racing industry used to bring 800 million rupees as tax revenue to the coffers of the state. But the state, as a tax collector, has an obligation to make Champ de Mars an attractive leisure and recreational place. We have to bring back the punters and families to the Champ de Mars. Yes, we can do it, and I agree that MTC cannot be judge and party. It cannot be impervious to change. MTC has to prepare a credible plan to turn things around. There are huge financial constraints, but it needs to find the resources to turn things around, and I'm sure MIC can act as a facilitator. We in government will see to it that HRD and GRA, Gambling Regulatory Authority, are fiercely independent and the findings of the Paris report implemented. The MTC will organize horse racing. Mafia rule and cruelty to animals cannot be tolerated. I don't have to elaborate, but I issue a note of caution to the likes of those who fix races. They are people on the payroll of the PTP PLC. The Prime Minister has been informed, and he knows that GRA and subdivision HRD have to give answers. The number of horses found positive to various illicit or prohibited drugs is the worst form of cruelty. I hold the chairman of GRA and HRD responsible. Inquiry over nails spread over the racecourse remains the worst form of cruelty. The silence of the former Minister of Agro-Industry and Attorney General is shocking. The offenders will have to bear the consequences. First, who gave instruction to bouncers to intimidate and harm members of the Portuguese Tennis Club, to evacuate the club. The MSM regime is largely responsible for the total mess created. The professional squat and bluff master has to quit and return the Portuguese Lawn Tennis Club its location, which I think he did. The Free MP of the constituency number 2 have acted without fear, and the fight is on to enable residents from deprived areas to exercise their legitimate rights. They will play soccer and take the leisurely strolls. We have to say hell with the People's Turf and its mob. We say no to mob rule. It is not because it swells the war chest of the MSM that it should get away. There is substantial evidence that people of the GRA and the RRA act to give special and differential treatment to Mr. Jim Ellis. Mr. Speaker, law and order shaken and stirred. The rise in gang violence is of deep concern. With the high incidence of vandalism, how safe is our neighborhood? Is the police on the beat, or are they being beaten up? The law and order, as I've described, is largely subjugated by mafia close to the regime. The parallel drug economy with its milice has infiltrated political police and take for granted anything and everything. A Labour-led alliance will have to address the problem frontally, without fear and prejudice. Since 2015, acts of intimidation, harassment, violence are ugly features of our society, unacceptable. A panoply of measures ranging from appropriate legal and institutional reform will be taken, from police and criminal evidence to serious fraud office and penal reform. There are miles to go. The judiciary should not be spared. L'île Maurice est le seul pays au monde où le même corps de juges siège en première instance et en appel. Dixit Sanjay Bakul. This has to come to an end. Mr. Speaker, I would like to take a moment and to acknowledge and commend the principled instance and unwavering commitment to transparency and integrity demonstrated by the majority of Mauritians. I also have to convey special thanks to the Chairman of the Board of Investment, Oil and Scope Mauritius, and also former senior advisor to the Prime Minister. At least he has stood his ground firm. Let us be a nation of eco-warriors and inculcate a culture of eco-preneurship among the young entrepreneurs. Catch them young and let them understand the relevance of circular environment. MID started to work, but the regime deemed it fit to postpone the day of reckoning. 10 years gone, and environmental degradation is visible. The corporate climate levy will raise 5 billion rupees, which will be credited into a consolidated fund. I propose, I've stated earlier, the setting up of a public-private partnership, and with money raised to be credited to a special fund to be managed by the PPP, with specific term of reference for adaptation, mitigation, and turning the Republic of Mauritius into a pristine environment. Government cannot be trusted with the money that will be entrusted to it and credited to the consolidated fund. This money needs to be mobilized and used specifically for environmental projects. Mr. Speaker, the road to freedom in the age of AI is inevitable if technology is well harnessed. Make artificial intelligence an opportunity now. Productive sectors are there, but let us deliver a wholesale inclusive package for sustainable development. Let us say no to piecemeal approach or measures spelled out in the budget. From applied research and development and innovation in productive sectors, the potential to be an ocean state is at arm's length. More than ever, the country needs to get resources towards impactful research and development and innovation to build resilience and to get us out of the middle-income trap. The country was ranked 40th in the Global Innovation Index report in 2014 under the Labour government and has dropped to the 50th position in 2023 under the present regime, a drop of 17 ranks. The World Bank, in its report in December 2023 Country Private Sector Diagnostic Report, clearly mentioned, and I quote, "There is a lack of shared understanding, vision and strategy on how to foster innovation in the country, and which has led to a proliferation of small and scattered innovation programs and initiatives under several ministries and agencies with little coordination and interaction." It also mentioned that Mauritius was, I quote, "an early proponent modeling sustainable development with the Maurice Île Durable policy strategy in 2008. In 2008, the Labour government was forward-looking and had already embarked on a journey of sustainable innovation with clear vision and strategy. Our tertiary institution Industrial sectors, research centers have to establish better linkages to level up. And it is imperative that good governance and meritocracy prevail in all institutions. Whether it is services or manufacturing, our cane juice, rum, or Demerara sugar, we have to export brand products and market Mauritius as an attractive, affordable, and alternative destination. Make Mauritius attractive, the best sought-after destination for gainful investment. The ultimate secret to unlock and unleash the energy of a great nation is confidence, and not like the case of this government where corruption and opacity prevail. We shall be the next government. Prime Minister should pluck courage to call a snap election. He's like a spent swimmer hanging on to a rotten wooden plank. His exit is programmed, and he's swimming in an electable sea. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your speech. And now suspend the sitting for 1 hour.